Hey guys, today we're going to be painting a sunset. It's one of my favorite easy watercolors to do. It's really simple and a lot of fun, so here we go. All right, let's get started. First we want to go over our supplies. So we've got this Arches paper here. It's 8 by 10. It's 140 pounds, so it's a nice thick, good quality paper. A mix of brushes. So you want to have a couple different sizes. You want at least like a 1-inch or something larger, so when you do your wash you can cover a good amount of area and you've got it holds a good amount of water. I've got a even larger 1.5 inch, because I've got a big enough sheet. It always depends on the size paper you've got, how big of a brush you want to start with. But then you want to get down into smaller sizes for our details and our little trees. So maybe a medium size. This is a quill mop. And then smaller for your little details, a 4 round. So I've got some artist tape. I'm going to be taping this sheet down because it's going to be start out pretty wet with our wash. I've got my 2 jars of water. You want to have one for your dirty water, one for your clean water, a spray bottle so you can get your paint wet easily if you need it for your painting, some scrap paper to test out your colors, make sure you get the intensity that you want. My paints, I've already got these here in this little porcelain flower, and I've got a cerulean blue, a neutral tint, which is like a black, so your darkest color. I've got an opera pink, an aureolin yellow, brilliant orange, I think that's a pyrrol red, and just one spot for mixing. So I'm going to do pretty rich colors, not a lot of mixing in the palette. It'll happen on the page. Here's the painting that I worked on to practice the scene. I've done many of these sunset scenes. They're very simple, but it's all about getting a nice wash and having a nice mix of your colors on the paper that smooths things out. So this is a nice calm lake scene. So that's what we're working towards. So first I'm going to start by taping the page down. So this is 1-inch artist tape. You can do anything that will hold it down with, that's pretty secure. I mean, even washi tape I use a lot for smaller paintings. That can work here. It does kind of lift off a little more easily. So you can just decide what you would like to use. If you don't tape watercolor paper down and you're doing the big wash, then you will get buckling. And you kind of get that anyway. You can kind of see how this one is a little bent just from all the water. Then you can flatten that out after you're finished. But while you're working, you want to try to avoid the hills and valleys. And of course, better watercolor paper, thicker paper is going to help with that. Better quality, holds the water differently than lower quality paper. I will include the supply list down in the description. So we're taped down. Now we want to make sure our large brush, either your 1-inch, I'll go with the bigger. You want to get it wet, and it's going to be just clear water. I'm going to get this all wet. And then we will add our color in. So we want to evenly wash it down the page. Try to avoid the bristles of your brush getting stuck on the page. You should try to lift those out. But a nice even coverage, spread that water out look from the side to see how your sheen is. All right, I had forgotten to put my microphone on, so hopefully you can hear me a little bit better now. So I've covered the page with water. It's soaking in. You might be able to hear my husband downstairs. We are all working from home. And that room down there doesn't have much insulation because we had gutted it and we want to remodel it. It's going to be the fancy new studio office. But you can hear him from below. All right, so now we're going to drop in some color. So you want to go to one of your medium brushes. If you're looking at a sunset, it's darker up at the top. So you want either, I think I'm not going to start with my very darkest. I will add that in, but I'm going to go with my cerulean blue with a bit of neutral tint. So you want to have nice big strokes that cover from side to side. I'll dab a little of my dark neutral tint in here while it's nice and wet, right up at the top. Keep bringing it down. Your page is wet, so that should help, but it is, depending on the paper, it's going to dry out quickly. So you want to keep working with your wash and bring it down the page. So now I'm going to go into, with my cerulean, I'm going to mix it with the pink a little bit, get a little bit of a purple. So I did not draw my horizon line in, but that's something that I can eyeball that pretty well. If you would need help with a nice even horizon, you probably want to draw that line in so you kind of know where you're going to work towards, because it gets hotter and warmer as you get towards the horizon. So now I'm just going to drop in some orange. And notice how I'm leaving a little bit of the purple, letting some of that show through. And right at the center, I'm going to drop in my yellow for my sun. So this was just taking a clear brush to keep that paint moving down the page. And while it's still wet, I'm noticing I didn't get much pink in here. And I want to bring some pink into the sky. I love having an extra pink color, at least a few. Oh, and there's my dog. He wants in. So we are working now on the reflection down in the water. So we're going to pull down the yellow a little bit with some clear. Then we're going to add the orange in again. Make sure you don't cover up all of your yellow. And then if you go in reverse, there's some pink. Hopefully your page is still kind of wet. If not, you can always wet it with a clear brush. You want to keep it wet. So you want to have some of that purple. We're working down through the reflection. And then to our blue, I'm rinsing in between each color, of course. And I want to get all the way to the darkest down at the bottom, but I don't want to cover everything up. And then once areas are worked, you don't want to go in and do much more. You want to let the mixing happen on the page. You want to pick up excess. So I took a dry brush here, dry clean brush. I dab it on my towel and I pick up excess pigment so that it doesn't dry in a puddle along the edge. So the one thing that I think I might do, because it's the fun part about watercolors, the water's moving around the page and I can see that I have some excess water and paint in there, as I'm gonna take this side to side a little bit. Because a horizontal movement in there will be nice. So I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I'm just letting this kind of spread out on the page. It's subtle, but it will dry in a much more smoothed out, natural way. If you have too much water in an area, you know, sometimes you want that bloom, but other times you want to try to spread out the water on the page so it doesn't do the bloom. So here, I'm looking around the edges, and because I did that, I do have some excess water around the edges, and I'm going to dab it up with a dry brush. Because I want this to go all the way out to the edge. It's an 8 by 10, and I want it to be able to be that size. So I'm going to try to get rid of some of that excess. See if there's any under my tape over here. Listen to my husband. Conference calls all day. There's some buildup here. All right, so now we are going to let this dry. You don't want to touch it again, because if you go in and try to rework any areas, it's going to leave a lot of marks. It's going to be... Okay, it's all dry. I did use a blow dryer to speed things along. I did have a little blooming over on this side because there was excess water underneath my tape. So I just moved my tape in a little bit. So it is a little smaller now. But you can always crop in on things if you have to. All right, so what we're going to do is get right into our horizon. We're going to start our trees. We want to go with a really dark silhouette. So I'm going to go with this neutral tint, this black color. This is where you might want to test it out and see, you know, is it slightly opaque? Are you getting down to the darkest dark? What does the tip of your brush look like? Because what we want to create is a little ridge of trees. So you kind of want to use the tip of your brush and create that tree line. And this is where you can even do it now if you want to draw a line that will give you a nice even horizon. So if you take a ruler and a pencil, do a quick little measurement. So I have about a little over 7.5. So we're going to do 3.5 plus a quarter, 3 3/4. Although you want to look at your painting, of course, and see if that works for your sun. Where's your sun at? I'm going to bring it down to 4. You just want it to be even, right? So you want it to be nice and flat. So you could have done this first. It does help to kind of see how things turn out. And make sure we've got nice and even. And if you want to eyeball this, you can too, of course. Or you can give it just a little, very light line so you know where things are going to be. All right. Now go back in with your little brush. Don't have too much paint. You don't want anything to drip. You got to be really careful with this because this dark color would be really hard to try to lift out of your painting. So you probably see a drip here. So be careful of drips that are on the brush as well. Just drips of water, because they can run down and then drip on your page. So I'm just going to go a little up from my horizon line and create the top ridge of the trees. And I want just it to feel irregular, and then you can fill in all the way down to your horizon line. You can see how it's such a nice contrast with those really bright colors. I want it to kind of get smaller right at sort of the sunset here. You can have it fade off completely if you wanted your view to, you know, that water is going to continue on perspective-wise. But for this is inspired by, you know, our local Michigan inland lakes, and usually we don't have a lot of big hills. It's pretty flat because that also is a reason there are the lakes. But they do have trees usually all around. Although this lake, the picture that inspired this actual sunset, I know it seems very basic, but it was from a picture, and that was taken at Strawberry Lake on our chain of lakes. So they do indeed, somewhere here off in the distance, the lakes connect by the Huron River. And they go down, we're on the river north of it, but we can take the chain all the way down through a series of many lakes, 7 or 8 lakes. Some are, you know, much smaller than others. So again, I'm keeping this kind of irregular. At times where I want to build it up more, I'm adding, you can see my camera shaking. Let a little light, you know, shine through in some places if you want. The trees might not be totally, you know, filled in. You can go a little higher off the edges. It's up to you what kind of scale. I mean, obviously you can see how you could put in, you know, layers of mountains in the background. You could do many more clouds. But I'm going to just keep it nice and simple and pretend this is a really smooth, calm lake at sunset. So I am now going to take more of a medium brush, just get my brush wet and get a little blend going. So not dripping, but full of water, and just grab the edge of my trees. Rinse it again. I don't want it to have, you know, any pigment in there, so that it blends down to the waters below. But now I'm just using clear water, and I'm getting this whole area wet again because I want to have a little bit more of a reflection of all my trees. So that area is wet now, just clear water. And I am going to, you don't want to do it too much because it'll start to pick up the pigment, but I'm going to take like a light version of my black. So I'm going to water this down a little bit. Test that out. Make sure it's not, you know, super dark, not super wet either. I like to dab, you know, excess out with a rag here. But then I'm going to mimic while it's wet, so that it bleeds, you know, into that wet space. I'm going to mimic the shape of those trees. And hopefully it's still, you know, nice and wet, so that it'll kind of bleed into the space and look more like a soft reflection. And that is it for this painting. If you want to go in with more detail, you can add some darker clouds that fade off into the distance. Of course, then those would be kind of reflected down in the water. But for a very simple but very, you know, powerful sunset painting, this is enough. and it's you know, super peaceful. Makes us think about summer, which we're all so excited. It's going to be here soon. So enjoy. I hope you guys try this and share how it goes.